Hi everybody and welcome back to SE Aviation, and today if you are not having good landings, this is a video for you to watch, because today I'm going to teach you how to have good landings. Okay, so there are 10 tips for good landings. First one is to have a clean cockpit. Second is to have good airspeed. Third is to have your controls calibrated. 4 is to disconnect your autopilot early. 5 is trim. 6 is your aiming point. 7 is the screen. 8 is 50 at the numbers. 4 is retard at 40, and 10 is a possible go around. So let me explain you. First, clean cockpit. Clean cockpit means to have everything stabilized on the panels, have everything ready, have all the switches in their appropriate position so that you don't have to be touching them constantly. So let's do that with your overhead panel. And okay, the overhead panel is set. We're not gonna touch it anymore. Let's go with our MCP, our remote control panel. You just want to match the heading here to 251 and have your go around altitude, which is 3000. And center pedestal, you don't touch that one except for transponder and TA array. Speed brake goes to arm, and the auto brakes goes to 1 or 2 depending on their length of the runway. Second is the airspeed. You want to have a good airspeed. In this case, 130 knots is perfect. Third, you want to have your controls calibrated, okay? If your controls are not properly calibrated, you're not going to have good landings. It's as easy as that. So put yourself in a comfortable position. Try that your iPad or iPhone or any phone is leveled with your actual ground, with your setting. Recalibrate them, save. And here comes our fourth tip, which is to disconnect the autopilot very early. Why? Because when you disconnect your when you disconnect your autopilot early, you get to feel the aircraft, okay? That's very important. You have the feel of the aircraft. If you disconnect it too late, you're not gonna know how the airplane is behaving, because the autopilot's gonna know that. But you are the pilot, so you have to feel it. So that's key. 5, trim. Have an appropriate trim so that you have your iPad in a comfortable position. That's kind of the calibration also, but if you don't want to recalibrate, then just trim a little bit right here with your right thumb. That's that I do it. 6, aiming point. You want to have an aiming point. It's a point in the runway at which you want to land. So I want to land at those white markings right next to the puppy lights, because that's my aiming point today. So you have to keep that in mind. 7, screen. What do I mean with the screen? Look at this example in which I'm gonna fly 2 times the same approach. Okay, so look at what happens if I'm going too high. So if I'm almost climbing, not really descending while I'm approaching, you can see that my aiming point right on the window in front of me goes down. It moves down. It keeps moving down and moving down and moving down until it actually disappears. When does it disappear? When I'm over it. So if this isn't excessively I'm excessively high for the approach. So imagine I was like this, you can see that the aiming point is moving down. Now look at what happens when I am too low. In this case, let me give flaps 48, here down. If I get too low like this, you can see that my aiming point is gonna start to move higher and higher and higher in my screen, as you can see here. It actually even disappeared, but you can see it's moving higher. I'm too low, so it moves up. Now, look at what happens if I try to keep on glide slope, right on the perfect glide slope. So not too high, not too low. You can see how the aiming point actually keeps like on the center of the screen. That's great. It means that you're stabilized with the approach. So you don't necessarily have to look here at your glide slope indicators. You can just move here, and by determining your position relative to the poppy lights and also to how the runway is moving, you can see if you're too high or too low. You can see it start to move low because I'm too high. I'm too low, sorry. Try to keep it centered. 200.
100.
100.
50, 40, 30, 20, 10.
Hold it. Touchdown. Great. Okay, fourth tip is to have 50 on the numbers. What does that mean? It means that when you pass over the runway numbers, you want to have about 50 feet of altitude. Radio altimeter, because the airplane's going to start calling out 1,000, 500, 400. You want to have about 50 once you pass the runway numbers. 9 tip, retard at 40 feet. When you hear 40, retard the thrust levers right here in the left part, so that you don't get the airplane into ground effect. Ground effect is something that can happen and make you float. And 10 tip, go around, guys. If you don't feel comfortable, you don't have to land. You can always go around. Try to keep the center line. You achieve that by having the controls, by moving them smoothly, being very concentrated. Very concentrated, that's key.
200, light slope, light slope, light slope, light slope, 100, light slope.
Okay, 50 on the numbers.
50,
good.
40, 30,
retard.
20, 10.
Hold the altitude until you land. Okay, now you can achieve smooth landings by practice. In this case, this one was not that smooth. I had to flare a bit more. I didn't. But you can only achieve smooth landings by, please, practicing. If you don't practice, okay, 40 knots manual braking, you're not gonna have good landings. It's as easy as that. But there are some tips. So by looking at it and an aiming point, you can have better landings. And by flaring about a 50 feet, 40, raise the nose and land. So this is how you have good landings. I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you all next time. Bye bye.